Okay, on the right side, the greatest common factor in 3 and 15 is 3. No x's in common. So divide by 3. 3 divided by 3 is 1, and we've got an x. Negative 15 divided by 3 is negative 5. So they match. 1x minus 5. And then the other one, combine these two, 4x squared plus 3. Final answer. So example 2 is very similar. We've just got one step before we do the factor by grouping, which is what we just did. So this says factor out the GCF. So the very first thing we're looking for is a common factor in all 4 terms. So it's saying what number or what variable goes into all 4. And we're going to take that out first and then do exactly what we were doing. So what number goes into 8, 12, 16, and 24 and is the biggest? So 2 goes into all of them because they're all even. But 4 also does. 4 goes into 8, 12, 16, and 24. And that is the biggest. So that's the GCF. And there's also, since all of them have a y attached, that means there's also a y in common. This has 4, this has 3, this has 2, this has 1. So the most we could take out of all of them, if I were to list them all out and circle it, there would only be one match because this only has one y. So there's only one y in common, so y to the first. So we need to divide each term by 4y. So 8 divided by 4 is 2. The y's, remember that's got a 1 on it, so we're subtracting. 4 minus 1 would be y to the third. 12 divided by 4 is 3, and then y squared. 16 divided by 4 is 4, y to the first. 24 divided by 4 is 6, and then the y's cancel out. So that's the first step. That's the only new part on this entire example. This part is still part of your answer, and I'll kind of show you how to deal with that in just a minute, so don't lose track of this. So with this that's left over, we're going to do the same exact steps, cut it in half, find the greatest common factor on each side, and then write our answer. So when you write your answer, it's going to have the 2 sets of parentheses. And then because we had a greatest common factor this time, before we didn't, now we do. That goes out front of your answer. So I like to go ahead and set it up down at the bottom. That way I don't forget it. So we can ignore this now because I already put it down with my answer. So we're looking for a greatest common factor in 2 and 3. So nothing goes into both other than 1. And then the y's, I have 3 here and 2 there. So the matches, there would be 2 in common. So I'm going to divide by 1y squared. So 2 divided by 1 is 2. And then the exponents, again, we subtract. 3 divided by 1 is 3. And again, those cancel out. Same thing on this side. So common factor in 4 and 6 would be 2. Y's, there are none in common. This has 1, this has none. So we can't match any. Divide by 2. 4 divided by 2 is 2, y, and then 6 divided by 2 is 3. So then let's fill in our answer. This was our GCF from the very beginning. Then these two, you can put them in either order. This needs to go in one set, so 1y squared plus 2. The other set is that one that matches, 2y plus 3. Final answer. So the only difference here is that greatest common factor at the very beginning, and all you do with it is just put it in front of your answer. So we're going to do a couple more of these. Number 2, so first thing, we're looking for a number in common that's in every single term here. So 12, 10, 36, and 30. Trying to think of a number that goes into all of them. 2 for sure does, because they're all even. If you can't come up with what else might go into it, I typically look at the smallest number and think, okay, what goes into 10? 1 times 10 goes into 10, and 2 times 5. So those are really my options. 1 goes into all of them, 2 goes into all of them. Does 5? No, it does not go into 12. So it has to go into all of them. So 2 is really my only option here, and it is the greatest. So I'm going to divide by 2. There are not p's in every single one of them. Since there's not one here, it's not uncommon. So my greatest common factor here is just 2. So I'm going to divide each one by 2 before I do the grouping. So 12 divided by 2 is 6. The p's are all going to stay the same because I'm not dividing by a p. 10 divided by 2 is 5. Negative 36 divided by 2, negative 18. And negative 30 divided by 2 is negative 15. So again, this just goes in front of my answer. If you want to go ahead and set that up, that way you don't forget about it, that's what I like to do. And then you can just ignore that it's there. So line down the middle, find the greatest common factor of 6 and 5. So the only thing that goes into both is 1. And then the p's, I've got 3 and 2 again. This is very common if you haven't noticed. This has been 3 and 2 every time, I think. So p squared, divide each one by 1p squared. So 6 divided by 1 is 6. 3 minus 2 is 1, so that's p to the first. 5 divided by 1 is 5, and again the p's cancel out. On the left side, this is another one where we've got a negative in common, so make sure you take that out. And then what number goes into 18 and 15? 2 does not, because they're not even. 3 goes into both, and that is the highest, because the only other thing that goes into 15 is 5, and it does not go into 18. So 3, again, there's no p in common here, so I can't take that out. Just going to divide by negative 3. So negative 18 divided by negative 3 is positive 6, and then that p is still there. Negative 15 divided by negative 3 is positive 5. So then our final answer, 2 should be out front. If you haven't written it already, that should be there from our greatest common factor. This goes into 1, p squared minus 3. The other one is this one that matches, 6p plus 5. And that's the final answer. So I think I'm going to stop here just to give you enough time to get through the questions after this. If you're confused, again, you need to maybe rewatch until it makes sense or get to resource. You will have 5 questions after this that are worth a grade. So make sure this makes sense before you get to those 5. If you have any questions, again, make sure you get to resource. I will be back tomorrow. The lesson is basically this plus a couple steps. So hopefully this makes sense to you by then. If not, you might need to stay in resource again tomorrow or come after school for a little bit of extra help. So after you finish your problems, your 5 problems after this video, make sure you get the homework from your substitute. Have a good day.